Hi folks, this is Janet. I am a writer who also happens to drive tractor trailers across the country. And I am parked right now in Holiday, Tennessee. Today is Friday, May the 6th, 2022. And May the 6th is an important day in my family. 39 years ago today, my oldest sister went into a hospital in Augusta, Georgia, to have a baby. She was pregnant and in labor. In the hospital, she said to one of the nurses, "My mother's due also, and she should have her baby any day now." The nurse said, "Well, what's your mother's name?" My sister told her, and the nurse said, "Honey, your mother's in the next room." And that was true. Mother was in her early 40s at that time. She and Daddy got married when they were teenagers. So they were having children from 1958 until 1983. Bless their hearts. So they had 8 children together. And my baby brother was born on that day. But my sister had her baby first. Her second daughter was born an hour before my brother, which meant that in our family, my niece was 1 hour older than her uncle. And so May the 6th is important to me. Now, tomorrow is also an important date. That's my granddaughter's birth date, May the 7th. It is also the birth date of the woman that I worked with for more than 3 years, co-editing with her memoir that she had written, and then doing a second edition. So May the 7th is important to me. Next weekend, my family has another, what you would consider a reason to celebrate. May the 13th, my oldest sister, the same one I just mentioned, and my youngest sister have a birthday on the same day. Later in the month, a man that we were introduced to after my baby brother took his life, the one that was born on May the 6th, he took his life in 2012. After he did that, we discovered that we still had a baby brother that none of us knew about, except my father. But this baby brother steps out of the shadows and lets us know that while we are grieving for this baby brother, we still had a baby brother to love. So he became a divine blessing to the family. His birthday is toward the end of the month. So May, you would think, for my family, would be a really celebratory month. But in fact, it is a silent month. And not because my brother Monty took his life and was born in May. May has been a silent month in my family for decades. Why? Because my mother is one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they don't celebrate birthdays. Now, this isn't a video to bash Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't mean to do that with this video. I'll just be stating facts about them. And the fact is, the Watchtower Society tells its members that celebrating a birthday is giving too much honor to an individual, attention and glory that should only go to the Most High God. So they don't recommend or approve birthday celebrations. The other reason they don't do it is because they say in the Bible there are only 2 birthday parties mentioned, and at both of them someone's head was cut off. John the Baptist is the most famous of those 2 beheadings. So for those 2 reasons, they encourage their members, the governing body of the Watchtower Society, you could become an ex-member if you celebrate your birthday. That's just so strange to me. I subscribed to that, though, when I was a witness. But when I left at 26, I began celebrating my birthday. And you're going to consider this weird, and it is, but this is how I began celebrating my birthdays. I would go to a cemetery, and I would walk through the cemetery looking at the names, looking at the dates of death and birth and death, and I would try to imagine who the people were who were in those graves. When I moved to Atlanta in 2000, I started visiting Oakland Cemetery because one of my favorite authors is buried there, Margaret Mitchell. And so I would look at that. Also buried in that cemetery is Maynard Jackson, who was the first African-American mayor of Atlanta. Looking at Maynard, the African-American part is debatable, but that is the label that he had and has. So, but with Mitchell being buried there, you would expect there to be other descendants of the Georgia planter class. And so there were, and I imagine that's what I was seeing, because their graves, there were many fancy looking vault graves there, mausoleums. And some of them occurred around the Civil War period, or during the Civil War time. And during that time I saw that one family would lose several young children around the same period, from babies to toddlers, and I didn't know why. Probably war related, maybe directly from the war itself, or from plagues, diseases. Whatever the reason, it was saddening to see. And that was part of the reason why I visited a cemetery on my birthday, because I would thank God that I could walk through the cemetery on that day instead of being a resident of the cemetery. So I know that's weird, but that is how I started. Fortunately, I was dating normal people at the time, and they would do normal activities, such as taking me out to dinner or give me a nice gift for my birthday. I never had a party, though. And that's something that, here I am, over 40, well over 40, and I've never had a birthday party. And I'm not saying that with any kind of self-pity. I don't need a birthday party. I didn't grow up having them. And again, this isn't to bash the witnesses or my mother. It's certainly not to bash my mother. But she never gave any of her children birthday parties. Now, in her defense, my mother would acknowledge our birth dates with something as simple as, "Oh, so you're 16 years old today, huh?" And then when I moved away, "Oh, you're 28 years old today." And that was the most her religion allowed her to do. But at least she did that, and I was grateful for that. Now, I would say for the past 20 years, my mother would not acknowledge my birthday at all, nor would my father. And that didn't bother me so much until I was in my late 30s. Then it began to anger me a little bit. I'm like, this is so ridiculous. My father wasn't a witness, so he didn't have a religious reason. He just didn't do it. I don't know why. I know he loved his kids. I know that. I know my mother loves us. But my father, I don't know. Maybe it's because he had 8 children. Well, 9 actually. and he didn't want to acknowledge the birthday of one, forget the birthday of the other, and then hurt somebody's feelings. I don't know. Maybe that's why. I just never knew. I do know that around the late 30s, early 40s of my life, I began to think how abnormal that was. That my birthday could come and go in April, and I never hear from my mother or father. That was just, every family has its quirks, and that was one of ours. But the damage that can do to a young person growing up witness and never having any kind of celebration, for your life, it can be harmful. I mean, the damage can occur. The self-esteem can be hurt, I think, because the person or the 2 people responsible for your being here don't do anything special on the day, on the anniversary of your arrival. I don't understand that. But I do understand the Watchtower Society saying that people can give glory and honor to themselves. They can do that. People do that all the time. We live in a society now where people do think they're miniature gods. They're divas, they're queens, they're, all this self-glorification does exist. So it's not a stretch to imagine that people can go over the top when their birthday comes. So the Watchtower Society has a point on that. But it's way off point in thinking that most people do that in simply honoring their birthday. They don't. They simply are thanking, many of us are thanking God that we have life. Now, the Watchtower Society has no problem with its members celebrating a marriage, a wedding anniversary. A marriage produces life. You celebrate the marriage, but you don't celebrate the life that's produced by that marriage. That's just so backward. But anyway, I have progressed into celebrating my birthday in more normal ways. April, which just ended, is my birth month. And what I did this April is I paid for my own celebration. It wasn't a party. I don't need a party, as I said. But I simply took myself and two of my favorite people to my favorite restaurant where I ordered my favorite dish and had my favorite drink. And what those things were, from France, Paris, France, the woman that I had worked with to edit her memoir was in the country. So she and I, that day, we went to the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum in Atlanta, where the book that we worked on reportedly is a part of the archives. I say reportedly because we were not allowed into the archives. You can only get in if you are in a research project, involved in a search project. So we couldn't get in to actually see the book, but she had received word that the book had been accepted by the library. So she was in town for that and also to see her family that lives in Augusta, where she and I both grew up. But anyway, so I had her. We had gone to the Carter Center that day, and then we went to eat. The other person present was one of my sisters-in-law, and this is a good-hearted woman that I have long respected and liked. So I had the two of them. They had their blue gin drinks, and at the end I had my drink. I'll let you know what that is in a minute. But my dish was the best version of grits and gumbo I have tasted in any part of the country. The only thing that comes close to being the best thing in my mouth is a dish I have found in Louisiana, no surprise there, along I-10, exit 80 in Crowley, a place called Rice Palace. They have an etouffee and rice dish that is just the best thing I put in my mouth, except for the dish I had last month for my birthday. And that dish is called Low Country Grits. It's it's served by a restaurant called Vickery's. And Vickery's was introduced to me about 15 years ago by this man who was trying to woo me, I think. And he took me to Vickery's, and it was just the best thing I'd ever tasted. However, I had not had it for a few years. Because in June of 2018, on my mother's birthday, in fact, I stopped eating beef, pork, and chicken, as a rule. I've had some slips, and people have slipped me some. But beef, chicken, and pork, I stopped eating as a rule in 2018, which meant I couldn't have this favorite dish of mine. But I changed my mind for one day to treat myself. I also meant to say, when 2019 ended, it also ended my eating shellfish. And this Low Country Grits contains andouille sausage and seafood. Both those things were off my list, first in 2019 and then 2018. But it was the best. It was as good as it was the first time I tasted it. Hearty portion, just excellent. And it tastes as if they steep their grits in broth, not just butter. I've never tasted grits that good. So that was my treat to myself on my birthday, with two of my favorite girls, and I topped it off with a cup of sweet ambrosia coffee. My last cup of coffee before that moment had been December 31st, 2019. And I stopped drinking coffee because I went to Paris, France that year, because of dear Nita, who paid for me to go and put me up for 10 days and flew me back. It was just wonderful. But while I was there with her and her boyfriend, I could hardly walk. My knee joints were so inflamed. I felt so old. Nita, who was actually 1 year older than I, but looks 20 years younger, at least she did, she had to hold me when I went up and down curbs and staircases. You know, it was just embarrassing. And when I left France, my knees were so inflamed I couldn't walk for the rest of the year without pain. You know, I even pondered getting a cane. That's how bad it was. So what did I do? I stopped drinking coffee at the end of 2019, began drinking only water, and I promise y'all that changed my life. Within a matter of days, I felt the difference, just drinking only water. And in 2 months, all of that pain was gone. It didn't even take 2 months, but definitely by the end of 2 months, I could walk almost as I did when I was 25 years old. And that has remained the case. The only thing I do different is I'll add supplements to my water. Vinegar, or organic apple cider vinegar, or lemon juice, maybe a vitamin C powder. My son has recently introduced me to ginger root and lemon, cut up lemons, cut up oranges, you know, and so I will drink that tea now every once in a while. But water is my beverage, and that has absolutely changed my life. So some of you might want to try that. But on my birthday, I got that cup of coffee, and I promise you it was delicious. I know I savored that cup of coffee more than my dinner mates savored their alcoholic drinks. And they love their alcoholic drinks. So that tells you how much I loved my coffee. So that is how I treated myself. And I paid for everything. They lamented the fact that I paid. I told them, no, it's my birthday. I know what I like. I know what I wanted. And thank you all, girls, for making it happen. I wanted 2 of my favorite people with me. And they agreed. So why shouldn't I pay? You know, other people don't owe me anything on my birthday. A phone call is nice. A text message, if you aren't that close to me. I mean, if you aren't in my inner circle. Now, if you are in that inner circle, a text message is inexcusable. You can pick up a phone and call me once a year. But people don't owe me parties, you know. And I don't know if that's a leftover from the humility you're taught as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you know, or if I would have just been that way anyway. You don't owe me gifts. Just remembering that it's my birthday and calling me or sending me a beautiful electronic birthday card, as some people in my life do every year, is enough. I have one aunt who's really good about that. Thank you, Aunt. I won't call anybody out, but I have another aunt who doesn't do anything. She's my no-frills aunt. She doesn't send me anything. She just calls me. You know, and she's to the point, she's succinct, but like clockwork, faithfully every year she will call me, and I just love her for that. So that's all. You don't have to go over the top. I think that's it. I just wanted to, you know, just encourage people to celebrate themselves. Don't worship yourself. Don't think more of yourself than it is necessary to think, as the Apostle Paul tells us. But do show appreciation. You are valuable. Always remember that the egg from your mother and the swimming gentleman from your father, if 1 second it only took 1 second for you not to be here. Those 2 things met at precisely the exact moment needed to create you. And if that miracle is not worth celebrating, then I don't know what is. So enjoy yourselves. And I hope I said something here that you enjoyed, or that gave you something to think about. Because certainly many of you have created videos that have done wonderful things for me.